My friends, I think today is your lucky day. Did you know I have a Patreon? That's right. For a small price to lighten that wallet and your sole offer to my Patreon, I can make your wildest dreams come true. Not interested? Well, have that special someone you fancy? Someone who you want to adore you, please you at every whim, worship the very grounds you stand on? For the price of $1, you can have Horror Mickey's Love Potion. Even though the traceless cyanide antidote will be about $5,000, but who needs that when you can enjoy your days with that special someone clawing at your legs, yearning for a brief moment of your intention? No? Not interested? Well, if you fancy sexy bathwater for those thirsty gamer boys, maybe here's something that will surely have the guys gagging with joy. Horror Show Mickey's Magic Bathwater, made with real Horror Show Mickey, jackal blood, and sulfuric acid to give you that pleasurable skin-tingling experience. Or how about Horror Show Mickey Spit? Tired of the dull taste of barbecue? Well, with 3 drops of Horror Show Mickey Spit on that grilled chicken, surely you'll feel the exciting effects of demonic possession running wild through your body. Show off to your friends with the new and approved you as you puke black and piss red everywhere. Or how about Horror Show OnlyFans? Enjoy explicit Mickey performing surgery with chainsaws and power tools for my erotic field fanatics. Now I'll buy that for $1. You know, my friends, I don't think I have what it takes to make a pitch on here. Not like Stuart Thatcher, our traveling salesman who has a technique of his own. Not that it's a method of guaranteed success or anything. Just a desperate hustle who thinks that selling useless junk to farmers and cheerful backwoods folks who've never seen a functioning modern-day appliance as a successful method to line his pockets. Oh yeah, Mr. Thatcher has had his moments of fooling people with that sleazy smile and door-to-door sales pitch, and his not-so-successful moments with those who don't take too kindly to strangers in these parts. So with Mr. Thatcher hitting a stroke of bad luck, not only was his day ruined by an incoming storm, made no sales, seems like his crummy vehicle had broken down in the worst of times, in the worst of places, and the only option that Mr. Thatcher has to get himself out of this nasty situation is a secluded farmhouse on a hill nearby. That maybe these dim-witted folks may have a working phone. But you see, my friends, I think Mr. Thatcher is about to learn that his day is about to get more interesting, seeing how these folks love it when they're visited by a traveling salesman. An elderly and eccentric couple who are excited to see what amazing and modern-day appliances are being offered for a reasonable price that will surely clean out your savings. But today's Yarn of Terror, my friends, not that it's important or anything, a salesman is going to die. Oh, come on with the spoilers. The title should be a dead giveaway. Now, of course, it wasn't like Mr. Thatcher was selling anything when visiting this decrepit home. Just in desperate need of a phone to have a tow truck pick him up immediately. But this elderly couple, Henrietta and Eben, who Mr. Thatcher found to be unsettling because of their enthusiastic and strange behavior being visited by a traveling salesman and their interest with what he was selling. What Mr. Thatcher found to be more off-putting is all the modern-day appliances that was inside this home. At first, Mr. Thatcher wouldn't bother trying to make a sale here based off the poor conditions of the exterior home. But after seeing the interior, surely Mr. Thatcher's bad day may turn out for the better. Obviously, these folks look like the kind who are interested enough to seeing what Mr. Thatcher has for sale. The Jackson Company's newest product that will surely be a perfect addition to this lovely kitchen. Lovely indeed. Like that new refrigerator. Did you know that when Henrietta and Eben had saved every cent to get a new fridge, it was like a godsend when this traveling salesman came knocking on their door, offering this new fridge? He was the first of many to come. Oh yeah, like an angel sent from the heavens, offering these fine folks the newest product on the line. With positive reviews from hundreds of satisfied customers a reasonable price with a 12-month guarantee. Yep, the old couple bought into the whole pitch and everything. Except when the damn thing stopped working 2 weeks after they bought it. The guarantee was bogus, the reviews and the company itself was a sham, and Eben and Henrietta had lost all their savings to a no-good crook. And after that was when both Henrietta and Eben vowed to never be cheated again by a salesman. Noticing the nervousness within Mr. Thatcher, a salesman who had just lost his confidence, his comfort. So the elderly couple vowed to make sure the product worked before buying. Take this freezer box here, for example. You see, when this guy came offering a new freezer, how he gave the whole spill of its features and how it would fit nicely in this kitchen, oh yeah, he was right. It did make the kitchen look lovely. But as vowed, Henrietta and Eben had tried it out first. So when Eben showed Mr. Thatcher the contents within the freezer, you can imagine the excitement within the old man when seeing the inner feeling of horror striking Mr. Thatcher, this inner horror suddenly becoming a reality when seeing the frozen corpse inside. Yep, they tried it out alright, and guess what? It works! Well, it did take 3 days before the guy froze to death. Now, seeing how Henrietta and Eben are eager to know what it is that Mr. Thatcher is selling, instead, why not give the man a short tour around the house? Let's bring his attention to this electric stove here. The fellow who sold him this, he was really nice. But so was the first guy. You see, that's how they get you, with kindness and that charming smile. You know, when Henrietta and Eben got the stove, they didn't expect the damn thing to work, but I guess they were wrong. Mr. Thatcher seeing the brown-crusted corpse spilling out of the oven when Eben opened the door, the powerful odor of aged rot hitting his nostrils. Mr. Thatcher's impulse to flee was immediately halted with the sounds of a loaded double barrel. Nope. The tour had just begun for our salesman. It would be rather rude of Mr. Thatcher to leave without letting these good folks know what he was selling. Now here in the living room, you'll notice the grandfather clock. The fellow who was selling this claimed it was a valuable antique piece, made from Europe somewhere. Supposedly it's one of a kind. It does make the living room look lovely when seeing the corpse tied head down. Too bad he stopped making those sounds when he bled out like one of them stuck pigs. And in here we have one guy who tried selling this top-of-the-line vacuum cleaner. It wasn't easy for Eben to tie the guy head down, have his mouth fitted around the fan pipe to see if it worked right. Amazingly enough, it did work, even though it kind of made a mess. And this new color television set. Now the guy who tried selling the television, he was a crook. Not that it mattered, but he didn't have that charming personality. He was one of those salesmen who liked putting a little pressure on the customers. You know, intimidating folks into buying what he was selling. Thought he could make a sell that way. Until he found himself sucking on this double barrel. How he practically cried. Obviously, damn thing never worked. Every time they turned it on, sparks would just fly from his head. But you know, when watching the salesman's head fry up like that, my God, was it entertaining to watch him smoke up the living room. And that's the thing about these salesmen. For some reason, they think they can just come into this town and make fools out of decent folks. Nothing but filthy crooks who are willing to suck them dry. It's not like anybody's going to give a damn about these degenerates, nor would anyone think twice coming way out here to look for them. But before Mr. Thatcher showed Henrietta and Eben his amazing product, they gotta take Mr. Thatcher downstairs to show him that new clothes dryer. You know, with the vacuum cleaner incident and the horror show with the television, I think it would be best to try out Mr. Thatcher's new product downstairs. Can't be living in a messy, unkept home, now can we? Seeing the blistered, scorched body inside the clothes dryer, I think that was when Mr. Thatcher had finally came to terms. He was going to die. That's right, my friends. Looks like some salesman is going to die. Not like we don't already know this. So the question is, how Is Mr. Thatcher going to die? Well, that really depends on the product he's selling. And seeing how Mr. Thatcher can't bring himself to say what it is that he's selling, I'm guessing there's a pretty good reason why this salesman can't bring himself to mutter a single word. And I've been going outside and down the hill to Mr. Thatcher's busted vehicle, excited to see what new product he has in there, while Henrietta keeps our nervous salesman stay put, silencing his annoying pleas. Well, well, well. Looks like a new addition indeed. A Mother Jackson's Little Housewife Helper. A handy and dandy meat slicer. It slices, it dices. Well, my friends, if Mr. Thatcher can have at least one stroke of luck on this day, let's hope that thing does work. 'Cause we all know how messy it can get when you try cutting something with a dull blade. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York City, where it's mid-July and the summer weather is hot. Our story takes place at one of the most populated locations in this thriving city, the subway, the busiest time of the day, morning. The subway, my friends, the one place that is full of your average dull citizens making their way to whatever destination, either escaping from the rising temperature of the July summer skies, or just zoning out as they automatically go about their mundane, miserable lives as happy citizens. But amongst this crowd, my friends, there is an evil lurking within the shadows, a horror that is worse than the things that lurk within the dark, desperately seeking out its prey, just waiting to inflict its cruel methods on an unsuspected victim for its own twisted amusement. Yes, my friends, this is an evil that is very much real, and unfortunately, it's a breed of horror that is very, very popular in today's world. If you like, you can say that this is just another horror created and fed by the hands of man. So what is this evil, this terrible monster that I speak of? Well, it was just a matter of time before the citizens in this subway car were struck by this horror. The pale faces, the dreaded expressions when these poor souls noticed an unexpected surprise that was left on one of the subway straps. Clinging on the strap with a clenched fist was an arm with no body attached to it. That's right, my friends. Outside this subway car, looking through the window, is a breed of humanity that brings nothing but shame. 3 medical students having a good old time with their tasteless idea of entertainment. 3 young men coming from the university uptown. Top students who are smart and have so much potential, and yet they rather be stupid with their idiotic decisions. Other than using their time wisely in studying and researching, or at least hitting the local clubs, they rather waste their days going around New York City and play morbid pranks on the citizens. Like going on the beach and setting up one of their deviant pranks while everybody goes about enjoying their hot summer afternoon by the cool water. Nobody noticing these 3 creating a sandhill with 2 feet sticking out, making it look like somebody was buried underneath the sand and had fallen asleep, waiting patiently until the tide came in before blending into the crowd, and watching the people trying to wake up the guy sleeping near the shore, laughing as they watch a few people trying to figure out how the buried man is still breathing when noticing that he was fully buried underneath the sand, not knowing that they were being watched from the sidelines. The 3 medical students anticipating the shocked expressions on everybody's faces when the legs were being pulled out. Getting to see the silly looks on people's faces was priceless for these young men. What makes a prankster an unforgiving breed of terror is their lack of self-awareness, their reckless behavior towards others, and this inability to stop because of their desire to feed into their pitiful idea of entertainment.
becoming addicted to the results of this vile sense of humor, and most of all, seeing how far they can push the boundaries. As if people on the subway and on the beach searching for a missing body was not enough to quench their thirst. It was no more than 10 minutes before our 3 med students found another opportunity when walking along the boardwalk. At one of the shops, a photography shop, there is a setup where people can have a gag picture taken. With a phony boat up front and a scenic backdrop of the ocean, customers would stand behind the card prop with 2 holes that had an exaggerated couple painted on it. When one of the med students decided to have his picture taken, alongside with another gentleman, who was a bit stiff, the other 2 students stood on the side, trying to retain their laughter, anticipating the outcome of their devious prank. After the picture was taken, that was when the med students immediately left and blended into the nearby crowd, watching the photographer's confused expression when still seeing the strange man still posing for the picture, trying to tell him that the picture was already taken. The look on the photographer's face was priceless when seeing the man's head falling out of the card prop, the whole crowd gasping and screaming at the sight of the decapitated head rolling right by the photographer's feet. Even though pranksters have a unique and pathetic way of causing chaos for their selfish ways, because of their inability to think things out thoroughly, that's why they are a dying breed, a horror that ends with them self-destructing or fading away with a faint whimper when humanity deems them no longer funny, unless you're the kind who thinks that pathetic people are funny. That's why our 3 med students are just now realizing a problem with their scheme. If you don't already know, yes, those were real human body parts they used for their pranks, all from the same body. Some unidentified male who wanted to have his body willed for medical research. Supposedly some creepy guy who had no friends nor family, but instead of the body being used for research purposes, these 3 men thought it would be best to use the body for unmedical purposes. The problem is the possibility of someone finding the remains of the body, and the fact that the lab is closed on Saturday, breaking into the medical building would be risky. But of course, our trio of pranksters are very familiar on taking risks, which is why they had no problem sneaking into the lab. Deciding it would be best to cut up the remains of the body, maybe using the organs for another day, making the pranks more interesting. It is sad that justice is very light for this breed of horror, not fully paying for their actions until somebody gets hurt. Even though their recent stunts have caught the attention of the authorities, and it's just a matter of time before a hunch will have people investigating the bodies at the medical building, I think we all can agree that the horrors we dream of are better at granting justice against these pranksters, lurking within the shadows of these 3 men, an unremitting horror just waiting for the right opportunity to make it strike. In one of the bags that were carrying the organs, our trio were unaware of the slimy intestines moving itself out of the bag, slithering its way towards them, enjoying the shocked look on their stupid faces when these 3 men began seeing the snake-like intestines making its way towards them. It wasn't until the following day before the authorities found themselves investigating the medical building because of the strange cases of body parts being found throughout various areas of the city. And that's when they found the 3 medical students, except they were already dead. All 3 of them. Their faces blue, eyes bulging out, the tongues hanging from their gaping mouths, and a long strand of intestines tightly wrapped around their necks. Funny how they were obsessed with seeing the shocked expressions on people's faces, and yet they each died with a stupid look on their face. A lesson for you, my friends. If you decide to go to med school and you got any bright ideas, looking for a cheap gag, you just might find yourself gagging. I bet we're all curious on what inventive punishment there is for those who prefer those terrible kissing pranks.
I have a belief that it's important to love what you do. As some of you may already know, playing storyteller on here is a passion of mine, but not something I want as a career. You see, I don't have the desires for fame and fortune. I just want to play the role as host to a collection of morbid horror stories and see my audience entertained as Horror Show Mickey. In real life, I pursue a different career under a different name, my real name. And as some of you know, yes, I love my job. I love what I do when I'm not playing the role as Horror Show Mickey. But I also know that there have been times where I've struggled when pursuing a career, where I've had people try and spoil what I love doing. And sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you realize life just isn't fair. Obviously, when we find ourselves in a situation where we are no longer happy with what we do because of the actions of other people, we do what we have to do to make ends meet. But for this story, we're going to focus on those who prefer spoiling and souring another man's passion. Introduction: Dan Harper, a cheerful old man who enjoys his time relaxing on his favorite wicker chair. A man who spent 17 years as a firefighter for a small town known as Lindell. You see, originally, it was old man Dan Harper and Clem Dunlop who ran the fire station, and seeing how they were in a small town, it was rare for these two men to see any fires in Lindell, meaning that, for the most part, this was a very relaxing job. But after Clem Dunlop retired, things kind of changed when the city council felt that the Lindell fire station could use a new fire chief so that they could modernize the fire department, which is why they appointed Chief Frank Miller, a man who is highly recommended for his enthusiasm, hard work ethics, and devotion. And even though the mayor and council are aware that Dan Harper is more senior than Chief Miller, the thing is, times have changed, and fighting fires have also changed as well, which is why with Chief Miller here, most likely there can be some adjustments and changes to improve things around the fire station. I know that I'm very well known for surprising people with these horror stories, but I assure you, my friends, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to share a story of a common struggle that is very well known in today's world. A story of how life isn't fair and what we can do about it. Immediately, Chief Miller wasted no time on making changes around the station. First of all, his goals of installing some dignity and pride in the station, beginning with the fire truck, which needs to be painted and polished because of its terrible condition. No way you can do a job as a firefighter when driving a truck that looks aged and decrepit. Of course, Dan Harper didn't agree with Chief Miller's attitude. How is painting and polishing the truck going to be an improvement for fighting fires? It was unnecessary. But questioning Chief Miller and his actions only resulted with old man Harper being scolded for his insubordinate attitude. Based off the condition of the station, the days Harper wasted in lollygagging, and his lack of respect for chain of command, it's no wonder why the council requested Chief Miller to be the new fire chief. And sending Dan Harper to the hardware store for 2 cans of brass polish, 2 cans of chrome polish, 2 gallons of red paint, 2 brushes, and some rags. Oh yes, there's definitely going to be some changes and improvements to the Lindell fire station. When returning from the store, Dan Harper was shocked to find that Chief Miller decided to store his wicker chair upstairs. From now on, the upstairs will be used for comforts such as cots, radio, and other necessities. Also, there won't be any nights where this fire station is left unattended during evening hours. Like every other fire station, there will always be someone here to respond to any emergency. And seeing how there will be a rotating shift, that's why Chief Miller decided to have a pole installed. And after a couple days of polishing, painting, and hard work, Chief Harper was finally proud of the new and improved fire station. Now I know that some of you are thinking that Chief Miller is doing a good thing. Maybe the Lindell fire station needed some improvements. And sure, that may be true. But you see, Lindell rarely sees any fires, which is why Dan Harper believed that most of the expectations of a modern-day firefighter is unnecessary. Understand that for 17 years, Dan Harper has performed his job well when fighting fires in Lindell, and there's nothing wrong with the new chief making some improvements and adjustments. But what you may not see is Chief Harper's disgust with Dan Harper. Fact is, Chief Miller despises Old Man Harper. His slacking behavior, his age that slows him down, and inability to perform tasks such as sliding down the pole. Basically, Chief Miller was purposely trying to work Old Man Harper to the breaking point. Saw him as nothing more but a burden that was weighing down the station. But even with his crack whip techniques, Old Man Harper still had the pride and passion as a firefighter. Oh yes, the long nights, the tasks, the chores mounting on his shoulders. There wasn't a day that went by where Dan Harper wanted to quit. But 17 years as a firefighter. There's no way Old Man Harper was going to let someone like Chief Miller break him and ruin his passion as a firefighter. Realizing that no matter how much he kept pushing Old Man Harper, Chief Miller was left with no option but to visit the mayor and discuss Harper's dismissal. Firefighting is a young man's profession, and Dan Harper is too old for the job. That could be an issue for emergencies and fighting fires. His age and inability to perform simple tasks may cost lives. And even though Chief Miller made a good point, problem is, the mayor can't remove Dan Harper because of the retirement age. Dan Harper has 5 years left before reaching the age for retirement. Even though the mayor understands Chief Miller's concerns, there's nothing that can be done other than convincing Dan Harper to retire early. Dan Harper was a stubborn old man. Chief Miller knew that there was no way he could convince Harper to retire. No matter how much hardship he put on the old man, it wasn't enough to make Harper change his mind. But on one night, when it was Chief Miller's turn for night shift, an emergency call came in. There was a house that was on fire. It was Dan Harper's house, and he was trapped inside. But before Chief Miller responded to the emergency, that was when he was struck with a sinister idea, an opportunity to rid himself from Dan Harper. Knowing that Dan Harper was trapped and his life was in danger, Chief Miller decided to take his time when putting on his firefighting equipment. Also decided to take a cigarette break before putting on his rubber boots, thinking up a plan to explain why he wasn't able to save Old Man Harper. And that's when Chief Miller thought of a brilliant idea of knocking out two birds with one stone. That when people start questioning him when showing up late, Chief Miller can blame it on the aged fire truck. Not only will he be free from Dan Harper, but use this as an opportunity to convince the council to buy him a new truck. And as expected, when Chief Miller finally arrived on the scene, there was nothing left of Old Man Harper's house. If Chief Miller had arrived earlier, Dan Harper could have been saved. I bet there are a lot of thoughts running through our minds on how this situation could have been better resolved. But as I said, my friends, life just isn't fair. And sometimes it's not wise to cheat when things are not going your way. Sometimes you just have to tolerate the intolerable and do what you need to do to make ends meet. Because of Chief Miller blaming the situation on a faulty fire truck, not only was Chief Miller cleared from any suspicion of foul play, but was able to convince the council to buy him a new and improved fire truck for this station. And yes, what Chief Miller did was horribly wrong. He practically got away with murder. But I guess when someone else is facing the consequences when someone decides to cheat life, there are some people in this world who refuse to follow the rules. Some people who are not afraid to show their inner darkness. Dan Harper was a good man who wanted to spend his final years as a firefighter, a man who did a proud job in protecting Lindale from fires, until all that was ruined and was murdered by a man who is not facing justice for his horrible deeds. On one night, a month after the accident, justice is about to come for Chief Miller when he had gotten an emergency call. His house was on fire. Immediately rushing to put on his equipment, there was something that Chief Miller couldn't shake away. The voice on the other end of the call sounded familiar. Something in the man's tone that sounded humorous and sinister. In the moment when Chief Miller reached the fire pole, that was when he remembered the voice. It was Old Man Dan Harper, and that was when Chief Miller began screaming as he went down the pole. The following day, when the mayor showed up with Dan Harper's replacement, what they found was an unremitting horror that should make you tickle. What was left of Chief Miller was nothing but a pile of body parts and a pool of blood. His legs and arms had been cut off, like his body had been split down the middle, and when examining the strange pole near Chief Miller's remains, they noticed that someone had replaced the pole with the steel strip, its ends sharpened to a keen razor's edge. I wonder how many of you are squirming right now, holding your crotch area when thinking what it must have felt like when Chief Miller slid down that pole. Talk about a cutting climax.
What is up, horror fans? I'm your host, Horror Show Mickey. Let's get right into the news. I meant the news. Today's tale of terror, my friends, is a breaking story that many would call entertainment at its finest. A reflection of how far man is willing to go to please an audience, to gain those views. To think that there was once a time where entertainment came in the form of public executions, where a pack of overgrown cats mauling people in the Colosseum was a way to gain views. And here we are today, talking about what people are doing to their pet cats on a social media platform. But for right now, we are about to join a Mr. Al Hunt, the ever so enthusiastic reporter who's excited to bring in the views with a special episode for his audience, where his desperation for higher ratings will bring him to the gates of hell, alongside with a professor who's experienced within the paranormal and psychic, a man who will act as Mr. Hunt's guide through this journey. Entertainment at its finest, as we watch these two poor souls spend one night in the infamous Creedmoor Mansion, and it's all going to be broadcasted live. So what makes the Creedmoor Mansion one of the most scariest and dangerous places in America? Story begins in 1897, when a wealthy business owner, a Mr. Creedmoor, had just married a beautiful and young bride before moving into this mansion. But due to the age difference and Mrs. Creedmoor's love for the money, the couple had constantly found themselves at odds. Their marriage was quickly dissolving. But it was on one night, a couple months before Mr. Creedmoor was to be free from his young wife through divorce, Mr. Creedmoor was found in the upstairs bedroom, hanging by the neck. Even though Mr. Creedmoor's death was seen as a suicide, there were rumors believing that he was actually killed by his wife and her secret lover. And after Miss Creedmoor inherited the money and everything else, she and her lover decided to move into the mansion as a wealthy couple. But it wasn't until a month later, nobody had seen the couple, until the authorities decided to investigate, and would discover Mrs. Creedmoor and her lover upstairs, hanging by their necks, in the same bedroom where Mr. Creedmoor had died. Since then, the Creedmoor Mansion had finally closed its doors for good, a relic with a lingering horror story. And yet that didn't stop those who were curious, daring, foolish enough to enter this pit of hell, which explains how 3 people were found on the 2nd floor, hanging on the noose. And now, we have Al Hunt and a paranormal expert waltzing through the doors of this building. And whatever happens, whatever horrors await inside, the world will get to see it. Like the common results of searching a haunted house in the hopes of capturing live footage of a ghost or the supernatural at work, Mr. Hunt found his hopes for great entertainment being dulled out when realizing that he just walked into an aged building with some paranormal fraud from London. Maybe it was the hype of the great Al Hunt spending one night in the dangerous Creedmoor Mansion, his plans of giving his audience a taste of horror for increased viewership, would become a terrible idea when now realizing that nobody's going to buy into this haunted house gig. And yes, Mr. Hunt spending a night in this place was starting to become a bad idea. Just not the way he expected. And as the professor decided to investigate the second floor, claiming that's where the psychic connection is the strongest, that this place is far more evil and dangerous than he had anticipated, Mr. Hunt decided to stay on the first floor and give his audience a tour of the mansion before going upstairs, letting the fraud perform his act and spook the audience with his theatrics. Now, maybe it was the darkness, the feeling of being alone within this dead, lifeless building, hearing nothing but the professor's shuffling feet upstairs. Or maybe it was this uncomfortable sensation that Mr. Hunt was feeling, as if he were being watched when giving a brief tour of the Creedmoor mansion, hearing faint voices, the sensation of something moving at the corner of his eye, even if his mind was playing tricks. There was something within this building that was curing Mr. Hunt from his feelings of disappointment, something that was making him feel very uncomfortable. Oh yes, my friends, fear. An audience witnessing the genuine terror of a man who had just realized he had made a terrible mistake coming into this place, and knowing that very soon he's about to experience an unremitting horror. And just as Mr. Hunt decided that it would be best to join the professor upstairs, that was when he felt something touch him. Something cold. Instantly, Mr. Hunt began to panic, grabbing his camera and rushing up the stairs, screaming for the professor, but no answer. But hearing the professor behind the bedroom door on the second floor, still trying to get a response when screaming his name. It was when Mr. Hunt opened that bedroom door, demanding to know why the professor was ignoring him. That was when Mr. Hunt immediately slammed the door, staring at the camera, the world seeing the frozen expression on this man's face. Al Hunt had just witnessed evil, a fool who had just showed the world that this place only brings death. Ladies and gentlemen, Al Hunt's final performance, a man whose mind was now whirling when seeing the professor and those other people in that room. So why not give the audience a show? Give them something that's worth watching. And with Mr. Hunt going back to the bedroom, leaving the door open, he was happy to see Mr. and Mrs. Creedmoor and her lover, the professor, and 5 other people. I guess that was bad research on Mr. Hunt's part. And stepping up on the chair, Mr. Hunt was more than happy to put the noose around his neck, knowing that his audience is going to love this. And that was when he stepped off the chair. The final moments of Al Hunt brought in so many views before transmission was cut off. Well, that's one way of getting right into the news. I meant getting into the news. But knowing how we are, our tendencies of confronting the unknown, how desperate we are for viewership, I seriously doubt that Mr. Hunt and the professor being found on the second floor hanging from the noose would stop people from entering the doors of this place. I bet many of you are hungry for another tale of terror. Well, my friends, today's special, I got a story for you. Deep fried and barbecued, just enough to satisfy that appetite. Our story begins at a dingy little restaurant settled right next to a busy California highway. The name of the restaurant kind of slipped my mind, but seeing how this restaurant rarely sees any customers, I don't think it's a big deal. The owners, a Herman Ditter and Charlie Marson, bought this restaurant a few weeks ago from the previous owner with the assumption that they were going to make a huge profit from this restaurant. And based off the empty tables and chairs, you could say that business isn't looking too good for both Herman and Charlie. And yes, it doesn't take a genius to know that this restaurant is not going to survive more than a month. But when Herman and Charlie received a visit from a drifter,
a cheerful fellow who wore tattered clothes and a confident smile on his face. You see, this man, whose name is Eric Edwards, he's been watching this restaurant for quite some time, and for what he'd seen so far, it's obvious that these two owners have no experience in running a restaurant, which is why Eric came with an offer that will turn this place into a huge profit. Basically, the restaurant is a failure. Even the previous owner knew that before selling it to these two idiots. In the past 3 weeks, since Herman and Charlie purchased the restaurant, they had a total of 62 customers, just enough to keep their heads above water. 2 more months with this kind of business, and their restaurant is going to go bust, unless they do something right now. So, how to turn this restaurant into a successful business that will make these two men a lot of money? Well, seeing how this restaurant is right next to a busy highway, in the past 3 weeks, there was a total of 22,000 cars that passed by this place. Over 900 cars a day. That's 2 cars per minute. Now imagine if you were able to stop 1 out of 10 cars. That's an average of 100 meals to serve a day, maybe more. As for getting the cars to stop, now that's Eric's little secret, which he'll be happy to share if both Herman and Charlie are willing to make a deal. For right now, if the two owners agree to a partnership, Eric will work for free, with the exception of meals and a place to sleep in the back. But what he'll be doing is shaping the place, changing the menu, and installing his own methods and ideas. And once the restaurant begins to show profit instead of a loss, Eric will receive 50% of the profits. In a couple minutes of thinking over Eric's offer, Charlie and Herman were kind of skeptic at first. Letting some random drifter become co-owner was kind of outrageous. But the guy definitely knows how to throw a pitch. Sounds like he knows a thing or two about running a business, but 50%, that's a lot. But it is better than nothing, which is why both Charlie and Herman decided to make a deal with Eric and allow him to become co-owner of the business. The following day and the days after, Eric fulfilled his part of the bargain when starting the remodeling process on the restaurant by adding new roofing, which was topped with a large bright-colored wooden sign. A red silhouette of a chicken had the words "The Chicken Coop" painted on the sign. That's right, Eric's secret specialty, chicken. You see, this whole time, Charlie and Herman never noticed that the chicken farm right next to them was a golden opportunity for their dying restaurant, and you can get the chickens there for a cheap price. That there is good business. So now that the people on the highway are able to see this restaurant because of its snazzy, bright-colored sign, now comes the part where they need to find a way to lure in those drivers. That's where the outside barbecue comes in. You see, when you're grilling barbecue chicken outdoors, the smoke will emit a scent of boiling chicken that will waft towards the busy highway. Anyone with an appetite driving on that long stretch of road will find this irresistible. In a couple days after the Chicken Coop was finally opened to the public, that's when travelers begin stopping at this fascinating-looking restaurant when smelling that delicious barbecue scent lingering in the air. Customers filling up the tables that sat right next to the barbecue, watching the chickens being broiled on the spit. And as expected, the Chicken Coop begins seeing a profit. Now with the Chicken Coop thriving and more customers coming in by the day, that was when Eric began thinking about expanding their operation, which is why he bought out a piece of land bordering the highway. This will not only give more tables for the increasing number of customers, additional parking, but also setting up a deep fat fryer, Southern Fried Chicken, which would make a great addition to the menu. Oh yes, the Chicken Coop became a huge success. There was even people traveling from different states to try out this roadside restaurant, articles that would talk about the success of the Chicken Coop, and even a handful of food critics that would come and buy seconds. And with the small restaurant making such a huge profit in 1 year, seeing an average of 100 cars and 250 customers a day, that was when Eric began pursuing this vision of his by rebuilding a new and much bigger chicken coop. That's right, a new chicken coop that will have a giant barbecue that will be able to broil 50 chickens at one time with 4 spits and capable of catching the fat drippings from the broiling chicken. That can be used for the new deep-fried fryer, a huge cauldron 6 feet in diameter, which can deep fat fry 50 chickens at the same time. And yes, my friends, with this new and improved chicken coop opening its doors to the public and immediately becoming a huge success, so many customers to where people had to wait in line for hours just to get a table. Money was definitely pouring in for Eric, Charlie, and Herman. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is confusing friendship with partnership, and I think that was Eric's biggest mistake, believing that the chicken coop was built out of friendship. Till this day, both Charlie and Herman knew nothing about their partner Eric. No family, no friends, never talks about his past. It was like Eric had just appeared out of nowhere. Herman believes that Eric used to run his own restaurant before it went bust. Charlie thinks that Eric had spent some time behind bars. Either way, it wasn't important. For Charlie and Herman, it was all about money that the chicken coop was making. In the past week, the chicken coop made about $2,000, $500 each for both Herman and Charlie, and $1,000 for Eric. That's double the amount compared to what Charlie and Herman was making. And yes, for many people, it is hard to distinguish the difference between a friendship and partnership until greed gets involved. Fact is, Eric was friendly, loyal, smart, and hardworking. Overall, he was a good guy that everybody loved talking to. But for Herman and Charlie, Eric was never considered a friend. This was no friendship. It was a partnership. And since the first day, Eric was nothing more but a valuable asset for the two men who were desperate in making a profit. And right now, they are thinking about making a decision that will increase that $500 to $1,000. Making this the first business decision for both Herman and Charlie. Now that their valuable asset brought their restaurant to its full glory, I guess Eric is no longer needed, making Eric into a liability that needs to be taken care of, discreetly. After spending a year of doing very little to nothing other than collecting their due, it's kind of surprising to see Charlie and Herman finally doing something when thinking up a plan to have Eric eliminated. Knowing that he lived in a ranch house that was a 15-minute walk from the chicken coop, both Charlie and Herman decided to visit Eric after midnight, break into his home, subdue him, tie him to the bed, pour gasoline all over the house, and make it look like Eric had burned to death when his house accidentally caught on fire. And watching the raging inferno from afar, both Charlie and Herman began celebrating their prosperous future. There is a reason why I don't deal with partnerships, or in other wording, collaborating, because I myself cannot distinguish the difference between friendship and partnership until selfishness and greed gets the better of someone and I find a knife in my back. But what scares me, my friends, isn't the fear of being stabbed in the back, but what will happen to the idiot holding the knife. The following morning, authorities responded to a call about a farmer who saw a house on fire and had also heard the sounds of screaming near the chicken coop. When investigating whatever was left of Eric's ranch house, the authorities found no sign of Eric until they went to investigate the chicken coop. What they found there was something that the authorities were unprepared for. They not only found Eric Edwards' burnt body, which had somehow made its way from the burnt ranch house to the chicken coop, but on the giant barbecue was the body of Herman Diddle, hanging on the spits and broiled alive. And as for Charlie Marson, whose body was in the giant cauldron, he was boiled alive from the fat drippings that came from Herman's obese body. So if you're thinking about a partnership, my friends, ask yourself, how would you like your collaboration? Broiled, southern fried, or well done?